I am Betty Mutimba. I am from Nairobi. I run the Startup Grind chapter there, and I'm Regional Director for Africa. I'm here today to introduce you to two Ryans who are amazing men and amazing parts of this ecosystem. The first is Ryan Smith. He's a part of the growth fund at Accel, and he's a super investor with companies like Hootsuite and Atlassian and Qualtrics in his portfolio. He'll be the moderator today interviewing Ryan number 2. Oh, God, sorry. So Ryan Sweeney from Accel. And next Ryan is Ryan Smith, the founder of Qualtrics. Qualtrics is an online survey tool which Ryan built with his father and his brother, which has grown and is used by companies like Home Depot and Gap to run client surveys. Both Ryans are amazing family men who take care of their families. And I'm glad to invite them on stage today to prove that it's possible to build a successful company outside of Silicon Valley. So the Startup Grind way, let's get up on our feet and celebrate them as they come on stage. Woo!
Hey, thanks. Thank you. Thank you. How's everybody doing this morning? Staying dry? Who flew in yesterday? How late were your flights? Awful. So we haven't had rain here in 5 years, and it's all catching up in 3 weeks, which has been interesting.
Stop praying for moisture, guys. It's rough getting in this morning.
No more drought, though. Okay, so we're going to jump into this because we got the red clock ticking on us already, and the Startup Grind likes to keep things moving. So my name is Ryan Sweeney. I'm a partner at Accel. I've been with the firm about 8 years or so, and I've had the privilege of working with Ryan Smith and Qualtrics for the last 4 years? So it's been an awesome ride. I've been able to sit on the Qualtrics board, but more importantly, be able to become good friends with Ryan Smith in addition to working together. So it's been a ton of fun for me on a personal level. Now, when you look at Ryan, does this guy ooze businessman or what? Look at those shoes. Look at those hats. So I've had to try to up my style game. But my first question for you is, dude, when did you start getting interested in business? You don't look the part. You don't dress the part. So tell me a little bit about it. Take me back to the days of young Ryan Smith.
So look, I try to keep it casual because it's always a good reminder that we can't take ourselves too seriously. For hell's sakes, we're working in technology and like the sky's the limit. And I think that for me, wearing a hat and just rolling how I roll, I believe we come as we are, and this is how I am. And so when it comes to creating Qualtrics as a culture, as a company, it's the same thing. Come as who you are and as you are. And I think that's important to establish. But starting out with business, I don't think for whatever reason, I wasn't dead set on what I was going to be. Both my parents were academic PhDs, and I think that was really hard for me to get my head around. So I wasn't like looking up at them saying, hey, I'm going to go research and be a PhD for the rest of my life and go down the academic track. So it kind of just opened everything up. I think the first taste of business I had was when I was a little kid. Our parents used to drop us off. We lived in a college town, so parents used to drop us off at the local football games, and they'd give us $5 or they wouldn't give us any money. And if you know the four Smith boys, we would always we wouldn't even go into the games, and we would buy and sell tickets, and we would buy and sell anything, and we'd come home like 2 hours later with like $200. And we were like, wow, this is like the ultimate supply and demand. There's all this money to be made. Anytime you get a crowd of 100,000 people, you can do something great. But that was probably like the first peak interest of like, you can actually create something if you want.
So I've heard the story before, but why don't you tell the audience a little bit too when you went over and started teaching English lessons? Because I think it's an interesting way to get your first true taste of entrepreneurship. I think for you anyway, it got the fire stoked a little.
Yeah, so I grew up in Utah, and as a kid, I was like, I got to get out of Utah. The world's bigger, so I decided I was going to go teach English at age 17 in Seoul, Korea. And I got over there, and I'd never really been outside the U.S., and I was in for a rude awakening. But reality I was an independent contractor. I was trying to build a business, and I had some crazy ideas where I would become friends with the security guards for these big apartment complexes. And they would let me put a little flyer in these mailboxes that were just like the whole wall. So I'd put a little flyer that says, I'm American, I speak English, I want to teach English to your children, which probably wouldn't fly today. But I'd put them in every single one, and then people would call me, and it was crazy because after a couple weeks, I built, a $100,000 a year business as a 17-year-old in Korea, and everyone was happy. It was just a great scenario, and it was just another example that you could actually think of something or think of an idea no matter where you are in the world and actually execute on it and make it happen. So that was something, and I couldn't understand why more people there who were teaching English weren't doing that same thing.
And the reason I ask these questions, I think Ryan growing up, when he first took interest in entrepreneurship, then going over to Korea and teaching English, what's interesting about it is that most of the entrepreneurs that we work with at Excel have done a bunch of other things before they start their ultimate business. And Ryan's no different to that. And we love that. We love hearing, when have you tried, when have you failed, what's gone on. But I think it's a good segue to let's talk about Qualtrics a little bit. Qualtrics has a unique founding history. I think the impetus for the company is unlike any that I've ever worked with. I think from a mission perspective and a family perspective, it's truly a remarkable feat what's happened. But why don't you tell the audience just how it all came about?
Yeah, so Qualtrics, we're a 15-year overnight success, which is it's kind of how it's actually becoming how the world really works. So some people are really good; they can do it in 7 or 8. I started Qualtrics as a junior in college. I started by accident with my father, who was a researcher. He called me, he had cancer, said he had a couple months to live. I dropped out of school. I was living in LA at the time, moved home. And instead of fixing up a car, we decided we were going to build a tech company. And we were just working on this project, and this project turned into, what Qualtrics is today. And so I think there's some interesting lessons to learn there is, we started with one client, then another client, then another client, and we were blown away. The whole academic universe started using Qualtrics, so we work with every university in the world right now. And then a shift came where people actually started taking it from the university market into the enterprise. And so people would graduate, get their MBA, or go to school, or faculty members would tell other business folks in the community, and then Qualtrics took off into the enterprise, and now we have over 9,000 clients in the enterprise plus the academic institutions. And so I think that, it wasn't like, hey, ready, break, here's an MBA exercise, we're gonna go create a startup, and here's the business model, let's come up with an egg, let's come up with some swag, this is how it's gonna go. It was much more of, we were solving a problem and we were working on something out of passion, and it actually all started because of cancer. And so it was all kind of started by accident. And I actually think if you look at most successful tech companies, that's pretty much how things have started. It started by a project or something that people couldn't see was going to be something, and then it's just a bunch of little pivots like going from academic to the enterprise where it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that's the case when you guys invested in Qualtrics. We were just a little survey platform. And if you look at what we do now, it's way bigger than that, and probably bigger than what you guys thought, and at the time what everyone thought.
And what's remarkable about the story, so Ryan's father got sick, and as a lot of professors do, they supplement their income on the side working with companies and doing consulting. So what Ryan and his brother Jared decided to do was saying, geez, while Dad's fighting this, how do we take what goes on in his head and how he does work for the companies and frankly just put it into a software program? And then from there, this company takes off. But the interesting thing about the company, quote unquote, taking off is that you guys bootstrapped it. So why don't you spend a minute or two on that? Just what was it like to bootstrap a company? Why did you go that route? And kind of did you know any different as you were starting the business?
Yeah, so my brother worked at Google. I recruited him to come back in 2009 from Google. He's running a third of the internet's in the internet search business. And I think it was an interesting time because we were bootstrapped. You guys reached out to us, I think in 2008 was the first interaction. We had this rule that we could do whatever we want, but we're not taking any funding. We're in Provo, Utah, so that was possible. We didn't have venture capitalists before then trolling around with anything that showed any glimmering hope to put money in. And I think that's what allowed us to pivot. No one would have bet on the academic market in 2002. You guys wouldn't have. It was a 7-year play. And now everyone looks back and says, wow, that's the most genius thing we've ever seen, and that was a great model. Well, but no one would have done it because you needed a long runway. And we were able to take a long-term vision for the business. And I think that one of the problems is, with short-term thinking, nothing great really happens. And so we bootstrapped. I remember in 2011, I came out here to Sand Hill Road. It was our first we didn't even know what venture capital was. I was afraid that they were going to make us move to San Francisco. That quarter, I think we had $9 million in sales, and we were making $5.5 million in cash. But we hadn't arrived for some reason. It felt like, but we saw that there was a bigger opportunity there, and that's when we decided to partner with yourselves and Sequoia, and we said, hey, look, we're going to go invest everything back in the company, and we're going to create, a multi-billion-dollar business, and that was the goal, and that's when kind of we had the aha moment that, hey, we're being short-sighted here. There's a huge market and a huge opportunity. So we use actual venture capital to scale our business, as opposed to using venture capital while we were in the incubation stage, because nothing would have happened with the capital. It probably just would have made us lazy at that point. So I'm a big fan of venture capital at the right time. And I think there's a time and a season for every aspect. And when you watch other people that are taking funding, that was really hard for us. Everyone around us was taking funding and saying, oh, look, we're validated. And here we are, we've created, we're on a, $45, $50 million run rate. We've never done a PR, never had a PR campaign, never done a media interview, never been out and done any marketing. It was all product and customer driven, which actually, if you think back, that's how a company should be. There's not very many great just marketing companies that are out there. And, once we did funding, one of the greatest stories is, you guys were telling us how great you were and everything about taking the money.
I'm pretty good at that,
yeah. And I was like, and you said, hey, do a press release. And I was like, well, we've never done a press release and never done a PR interview, but just call Forbes. And I told all the employees already that this was going to come out in Forbes. And they're like, well, that doesn't work. Forbes doesn't work that way. I was like, well, you guys just told us how great you were. Like, you've got to call Forbes. I already told the employees. And so anyways, we actually got that done. And, Qualtrics had their first media release in Forbes magazine. It was like a 4-page spread, and no one read it. So, so I thought in my head that, oh my gosh, we're going to be validated. We're going to be out there. We're going to get in a magazine, and then everyone's going to come and buy Qualtrics. And I don't think that's ever happened. And we've done everything up to this point. So I think it's a good idea that the fundamental blocking and tackling of customers and product are not going to change. And I think you want your customers talking about you as opposed to you talking about yourself. And I think that's been one of the successes of Qualtrics from the academic market and taken with it. There's a virality component that has to exist.
Yeah, and a couple things from our perspective. Ryan alluded to this. We started calling on Qualtrics in 2008, and it took about 2 to 3 years before they ever actually took our overture serious. But the nice thing is, and I think the misnomer with venture capital sometimes, is that you just go, you pitch, you take money, but the best relationships happen, no surprise, when you get to know one another. So for us, we got to see the company. We got to get to know Ryan, his brother, his co-founders, and everything else. And it was truly amazing. The rule of thumb that they had that always sticks in my mind is that they wanted as much cash in the bank as they were going to have expenses the next year. They wanted to know going into a particular year that they had enough cash to cover, in case they never made another sale, they were going to be okay. And that's how they built this profitable company that frankly didn't need us. And I think what was interesting was when Ryan did decide to bring people on, it wasn't just how do I keep doing what I'm doing, it's how do I reinvent myself? How do I go to the next level, and how do I build a multi-billion-dollar company, which, Ryan's modest, but as the business now plows through 300 million in sales, it's happened, and it's happened not because of us. We're oftentimes more lucky than we are good, but because they had the courage to really go for it and try to make something great. I'm going to switch gears for a second, given the sake of time. We could talk about the business and Qualtrics and the founding all day, but I think what's interesting too is culture and value. There's been some articles written over the last couple of days about company culture here in Silicon Valley and how that starts at the top, and I think Ryan and his team have done a good job. Just last week, Ryan launched something really creative with the Utah Jazz, and I think it ties to the founding history of the company. But why don't you talk a little bit about Five for Fight and explain why you think it's important for companies to do things like that and support things like that?
So yeah, I think when my dad had cancer, we always said, hey, I remember going at the time up to Huntsman Cancer Center where he received treatment that ended up saving his life. And I was like, hey, you guys are our charity. And they're like, sweet. And I was like, no, you are our charity for Qualtrics. This is awesome. Every ounce of money we get, we're going to give to this cancer research center because you guys are working on a cure. And they're like, okay, what does that mean? I was like, we don't have any money yet. But just so you know, you're our charity, so when a day comes, that'll be. So we set out to this mission that we were going to really try to work on cancer research. I mean, if you look at who we work with, it's researchers or people upstream working on the problem. And, we've given millions and millions of dollars to cancer research. And, we had this idea. The NBA just came out with those patches that goes on jerseys. It's the first time with the NBA uniform that they've actually allowed, and they're doing a 3-year pilot on whether they're going to allow advertisement. And so we were approached in Utah, and I've always wanted to work with the NBA. I'm a huge fan. I love the international platform, and said, hey, we were approached. They wanted to put Qualtrics on the patch, and knowing me, because I wear Qualtrics on everything, I have my own clothing brand that's Qualtrics. We were down the road that we were going to put Qualtrics on this patch, but last year at our user summit, we kicked off something called 5 for the Fight, which is, anyone who's got cancer, anyone who has a friend who has cancer, they can basically write the name of the person on their hand and give $5 for cancer research, and we will work with the cutting edge groups, Qualtrics customers, and these cancer research centers to donate $5. So we decided we were going to put 5 for the Fight on the patch, and we launched that last week, which is the first cause-related advertisement, and we set out a goal at Qualtrics that we're going to raise $50 million for cancer research, which is a pretty big number. But and we didn't really get a discount on the patch. I mean, fortunately enough, our investors were okay with us, making a $10 million plus bet for cancer research, which is pretty cool. So I think from our standpoint is I believe that while we're going through this journey, while it's craziness in tech, while we're grinding, I think that there has to be a bigger mission as well, as like, how are you going to make the world better, and how are you going to leverage the success you have with Qualtrics to do this? And amazing things have happened. Bill Reddy from Venmo and PayPal called us up and said, hey, PayPal's going to accept all those $5 donations without credit card fees, and we're going to partner with you. It's been amazing. FootJoy Golf just released a shoe that $5 goes to 5 for the Fight. We're seeing products and companies, and it's like, whoa, this is pretty cool on how this is going to spread out. We've got other NBA teams that when the Utah Jazz go and play, it's going to be 5 for the Fight night. So we're going to, in Houston, MD Anderson will get all the money for there. And that's how we're going to raise $50 million. So I think there's going to be a lot of things that we can be proud of as a company. And I think that's important. And it takes a lot of guts. I mean, I was sitting there even the last minute going, are we really going to do this? And typically when you feel uncomfortable, I feel like we're onto something. When something just doesn't quite feel like, are we really going to do this? That's normally when we're about ready to do something good.
Yeah, and just to clarify for the audience, for those that aren't NBA fans, so international soccer, how the logos and Emirates and everything else are sprawled all over the jerseys. Well, the NBA is going to start doing that on a much smaller scale in the top corner. And what Qualtrics has done in conjunction with Huntsman is they're not going to put the company logo on the jersey. They're actually going to put the charity on the jersey. So most companies buy this. They want it to be an advertising thing. And Ryan and his management team said, geez, let's go make this all about cancer research. And just trying to raise awareness, both with the league and more importantly from the employees. And in this environment we live in, it's crazy startup world. Everybody wants to be the next billion-dollar enterprise. I think it's really good for the employees to take a step back and know that the organization stands for something a lot larger than the day in and day out task at hand. And you can walk through the halls at Qualtrics now, and they all know what 5 for the Fight is. They're all proud of it. They're all proud of what the company's doing. But that has to start at the top. And I think when you read a lot about what's going on at some of the companies now with harassment issues to different types of fair employment claims or unfair employment claims, that stuff's good. You can really hang your hat on that because people know you have a moral compass and they know you have some values based in your decision making. Qualtrics, when did you first know it was going to be a success, or when did you start thinking you may be onto something?
Early years, I was just trying to make as much money personally as I could comparatively to happening like in college. I had offers from other companies like Ford to go work for and all these other companies. I just wanted to make sure that I could actually pay a salary or get a salary. So for 6 years, I was never worried about anything more than that. When did I figure out it would be a success? I think in 2010 or 11, we started really saying, wow, this could be a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. And that was, we had acquisition offers and we could have sold the company and gone home. But we actually partnered with you guys and said, hey, let's go take this to the next level. And that's when I first started seeing it.
Well, when you talk about a time you were worried, when do you think it may fail?
I'm worried every day. I believe that only the paranoid survive, and one of the hardest parts about being an entrepreneur is you have to have this incredible conviction and optimism, but at the same time, you can't be your own cheerleader. So you've got to have that dimension where you're incredibly paranoid, but also optimistic, and it's just a roller coaster of emotions, and you've got to get really comfortable doing that. And the reason why is because, innovation has a really short shelf life. So what we did in 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 isn't even relevant today. So you've got to be really comfortable ripping down what got you here and actually continuing to build. And this is something that we always talk about at Qualtrics is like, hey, if we bring what we got, we're going to get what we got, right? We've got to innovate, especially as we get bigger. And, we've seen this as Qualtrics has gone from 1 office to 10 offices.
And I think the thing with Ryan too, he never considered it a success when he raised money. He always, and is quoted saying it, I felt like I just took a really expensive loan. A lot of times entrepreneurs feel like they've arrived when they take money, but the reality is it's just beginning. That's kind of the new start, and I think Ryan and his team have embraced that from the beginning. The shot clock's winding down on us. So one thing I like to do when I'm doing interviews like this, to just let you get to know the individual a little bit better, is kind of give them some choices and do a little bit of word association. So I'm going to rattle off some stuff both on a personal level and business level, and just give me the quick answer, and then tell me a couple words around it. Going back to when you grew up, Run DMC or Beastie Boys?
Beastie Boys.
Today, Jay-Z or Kanye West?
Jay-Z.
Silicon Valley or Utah for a startup?
Oh, man. Utah.
Why?
This is like Vegas. We've got a 36-hour rule and got to get back home.
All right, so you're a homebody. You respect where your roots are. How about Kevin Durant or Russell Westbrook with the decision?
Westbrook for sure, but Kevin Durant's a freak.
You're getting away. You prefer skiing or you prefer a beach?
Live on the slopes, vacation on the beach.
Okay. As an entrepreneur, profits or growth?
Both.
How do you do both?
You just do both.
If you had to choose.
It's not an and or. Just figure it out. You're an entrepreneur. Your job's to figure it out. Figure it out.
One that all my partners at Excel want to know. We're going to stay private or we're going to IPO at some time? I don't get to ask this in a board meeting, so I figure I get them on stage. I can ask it now.
Look, we've been private for a long time. I think the next phase is definitely the latter. So I think we're going to be a great public company.
That's what I like to hear. All right,
turn that on him.
Last one. Startup grind or TechCrunch disrupt?
Oh, man. Have you guys seen my disrupt interview? How could you not back startup grind and Derek and everything he's done? I mean, Derek was a college roommate. You talk about mission driven, you talk about being bootstrapped, you talk about the good that's going on. I think the woman who introduced us, I mean, how do you not get behind that?
Yeah. And what we at Excel love Startup Grind is we take pride in investing globally and internationally, and you look at the audience here, it's not everybody from a 5-mile radius, which we appreciate, and keep doing what you guys do. Entrepreneurship's everywhere and has to be. So, we appreciate the efforts that you guys make too. That's it. Thank you guys.